Hey guys, in this video we'll be designing a case for something with a living hinge, so it'll have one flexible panel so that our lid for our case is integrated into our main case itself. So before we start, I'm just going to double check my settings to make sure my grid snap settings are what they should be. So I'm doing a minor grid of every 1 millimeter, a major grid line every 10 millimeters, and grid snap spacing of 1 millimeters. So it doesn't matter on which viewport we start. I'm just going to start my front viewport. And I'm going to go ahead and draw the outline for the interior space of the box I want. I want to design an interior space of 140 millimeters by 50 millimeters. And that interior space is also going to be 50 millimeters wide. So that should accommodate most pairs of reading glasses. Well, that's at least what I'm aiming for. Next up, I need to start designing the joints for this box. So what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I can fit my rounded edges on here for the bending or the flexible living hinge part. So I'm going to go ahead and draw one section of joints that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wide, 3 deep because I'm designing for 3 millimeter MDF, and then 5 wide again that way. So that is the start of my joints, and I'm just going to make a copy of that guy. So I'm going to say copy from there to there to there to there to there. To save some time, I'm going to do that again, and I'm going to say copy all of these guys, copy from there to there to there, and that gives me enough of those joints to do whatever I want with them. I technically don't need those extra ones over there. So that gives me that space, and I'm going to try and see if I cannot squeeze that in. I'm going to say move from here to that mid there. So it just overruns the edge a little bit over there. And I'm just going to move these over 5 millimeters that way, 5 millimeters that way, so that my joints are exactly within my bounds. All right, so these joints are also going on the outside of my edge. And the last thing I need to do is I'm just going to move these guys up to here so they're out of the way. And I'm going to make a batch of joints to go on my side panel as well. So I'm going to make that and say copy from there to there to there to there. Oh, no, that one's wrong. Delete. Select those guys, but not these. And I'm going to say copy from here to there to there to there. Let's see if my memory is good enough. Maybe I made doubles there. So I'm going to grab these guys and say join. Grabbing all of those and saying join. I'm just moving them up out of the way and making sure I didn't make duplicates of any of these. Specifically for laser cutting, you do not want duplicates because that's going to extend your cut time by a fair amount. So dropping these down to there, because I want the interior space to be this big. That's where the edge of my wood is going to be. And then lastly, what I need to do is I need to have a little bit of wall here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to draw my edge of my case over there. There we go. So that is the extents of my interior of my case. So I'm going to grab these guys and I'm going to say mirror over. So that is the bulk of what my side wall of my case is going to be. Now I can decide, do I want both edges to be rounded, or do I want one needs to be square? Now just to illustrate the living hinge part more effectively, I'm going to make both of those edges rounded. So I'm going to say blend arc. I'm going to blend arc to make that rounded, and I'm going to blend arc to make that rounded. So that is the bulk of that side of the case done. I'm going to go ahead and say join, and not to create chaos later, I'm also going to say group those objects so that this and this stays together. But I can also start assigning colors if I want to. That's probably not a bad idea. I'm going to select all of those, and I'm going to turn my curve colors to blue for the interiors because I'm going to cut those first. And then the exterior, I probably want to make those green because I want to cut those last. With that done, I can go ahead and say I want to group those, and that section is done. Now, next up, what I want to do is I want to make sure that my outside section is going to match those exactly. So if I say move from there to there, oh, my dimensions are out completely. What did I do? Oh, I matched the insides with the outsides. That's what I did. So there we go. That now matches exactly what I want them to do. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and say explode because I don't want that extra little tab there. And as you can see, if I join these now, they will match up with these exactly. But I do need to flip it over to the opposite side. Oops, that's wrong. Flip it over to the opposite side, delete that guy, so that you can see these will now plug into that one exactly. All right, so next step is I need to calculate how long my living hinge section has to be to pass and match this exactly. Now, from experience, I've experimented quite a bit with this just to calculate this edge. We can calculate the circumference of the edge there, but because the wood bends a little bit when we do the living hinge, it doesn't give us an exact measurement. Now, from experience, if I measure the distance from the outside there to the outside there, that's 56 millimeters now. If I multiply that by a 1.55, I get exactly the amount of wood I need to match that curve exactly. So if I go ahead and bust out my calculator on the desk here, and I say I want to go ahead and multiply 56 by 1.55, that gives me 86.8. I'm just going to round that down for ease of use to 86. So if I draw a line out this way, 86 millimeters to there, that section of wood will be long enough to match this curve exactly. All right, cool. So that sorts that out for me, the exact length I need. And now I also want to make sure how wide do I want this to be. Now I want this to be rectangular, so I want to go ahead and say from the inside here to the inside there, that's 50. So all I do is I draw a line from the inside here up over that way, 50 millimeters long to there, and I grab all of that and I say mirror up on over to the top side. There we go. I can delete that curve now. And the last thing I want to do is I also need to make sure that I have a section here that will seal up on the top of my case. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to draw a line out that way. I'm actually going to mark this just for convenience sake for later. Just marking this point so I can reference it back later again. And I'm going to draw a line out that way that is 30 millimeters long. And I'm going to draw a line out this way at an angle of 45. My ortho is currently set to 22.5, so I can either get an angle of 22.5 or 45 with that. That's what I want. So I grab that and I go ahead and say mirror up on over. It would have been helpful if I had that. I deleted that other line a little too soon, so I'm just going to say move this guy from here to there. That'll do the trick. And I can go ahead and trim off here and here. And I can grab all of that and say join. And I also want to fill it with a nice big soft loop. So I'm going to say fillet radius of, let's try 25 and see what that looks like. Yeah, that's about right. 25 here, 25 there, and 25 there. Nice rounded flat tab. That'll do the job for me. So that's what I want this area to look like. Next up, I need to start designing the living hinge here. Now, a living hinge is just a set of overlapping lines that allows us to cut the wood with a repetitive pattern, so it makes the wood flexible. Now, for wood this thickness or a radius this wide, I tend to want to work with a line spacing of between 1.2 to 1.5 millimeters. If I want very flexible, 1.2 is better, a closer spacing is better. If I want semi-rigid, 1.5 will do the trick. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to cut a line from here down this way, 15 millimeters. I'm going to make a copy of it. Copy that line from there. There's the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down. Now, why did I do that? I should probably go back. I want to make a copy of that one from here to there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks down. Well, I went ahead and snapped the mid now, didn't I? Yeah, I did. I want to make sure that this distance here is 5 millimeters. No, I messed that up because I would snap to the middle of it. So I'm going to go ahead and say move up 2.5. There we go. So that distance should now be 5 millimeters if I'm not correct. Yeah, there we go, 5. So why 5? Because this is 15 and I need a gap of 5 and then another 15 because I want to aim for a 1/3 overlap between those. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to mark a point exactly in the middle of those. So I go ahead and say I'm going to mark the midpoint there. That's exactly in the middle between those two. I'm going to say copy this guy from that mid to there. And I'm going to delete the short one and grab this guy and say move over 1.2 millimeters. 1.2. There we go. What that gives me is a 15mm line, a second 15mm line, and a line right next to that that is 1.2mm away. This overlaps 5mm here and overlaps 5mm there. It's exactly what I was after. So I'm going to grab this now and say mirror from the midpoint of this guy to the opposite side, to there. That gives me one set of lines. Now I just want to make sure how far that I go over here. That's 5mm. All right, cool. I want this to be as symmetrical as possible, so I'm going to move up 2.5 so that I overlap exactly 2.5 there, 2.5 there, and I have symmetry all around. Now I need to repeat this pattern going this way. So that's pretty simple. I'm going to select those, and I want to say I want to create a grid array, a rectangular array. Number in the X direction, that is the X direction. Let's do 30. I'm guessing here. We'll delete the extra ones we don't want. Number in Y direction, 1. Number in Z direction, 1. And my spacing for X should be 1.2 multiplied by 2. So that's 2.4. 2.4. And that gives me a repetitive pattern all the way that way. Now, the 30, or the guesstimate I did for 30 wasn't exactly enough. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to select a few more of these. Select a few more of those and say copy from that end over there to that end over there and that end over there. So this is where I need to make sure I stop. So those are the extra ones I'm going to be deleting. I don't need those guys, but I do need to just mirror these guys over, you, and you. I'm just going to say mirror over from here to there. Oh, no, that's wrong. From here to there. I'm almost there. I'm going to need another set of these guys. So mirror over from here to there. I want flexibility all the way up to that entire 86mm length. All right, that covers that perfectly. So that'll give me my flexibility I want for my living hinge section, but I do have some extra lines there. Now, in theory, I could just leave those. The excess cut isn't going to end the world there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab those and I'm going to say, I want to change the color for those guys. Oh, I missed a set here. That's not good. I'm just going to go to you, you, and you. And I'm going to say copy, copy. Whenever I make arrays like this, I tend to mess up a little bit and not necessarily repeat the pattern perfectly, but there we go. Our pattern is now perfectly repeated. And again, I want to grab these guys and group them to make sure that they stay together and I don't mess up. So I'm going to say group objects. That's now grouped. Cool. I can now change the color of those guys. I probably want to make them blue because I want to cut them first. And I'm pretty much done with my living hinge section now. If I measure from there to there, it's 2.4. That means it's 1.2mm between each one of those. That's my living hinge section done. I'm going to grab this and this and this and those as well and change the colors for that to green because I'm going to be duplicating this. If I change the colors now, I don't have to change colors for more pieces later. All right, so next up for the point, or for just for neatness, I can go ahead and say, I want to grab this and this. If I wanted to, I could cut those off by simply saying trim and going from right to left. I trim all of the excess off there. Now it's as neat and tidy as it can be. And the last step I want to do is I need to duplicate this because I want to have a rounded edge on this side and rounded edge on this side. So I need two sets of living hinges. So I grab that guy and I say copy. I want to copy. Where's my copy? There's my copy command from there to that in there. Right, now I have my living hinge on both edges and I need to decide where do I want the second part. See, this one goes from here to there. Do I want my second part over here to end halfway or go all the way to the edge? Now this section here is reasonably short. I might actually need to make that a little bit longer now that I think of it. So from here to there, we have 21 point something with a fillet. I want to go ahead and make that a little bit longer. I'm going to grab that and say move over just another 20mm that way. Just so I have a slightly larger tab to overlap here. Because if I now measure from here, that end to there, that's 41 point something. If I measure that way or draw a line this way, now I know if I'm going 41 this way, my tab will go all the way to there. So I can now decide, do I want to have my top part of my case stopping there so I have easier access here? Or do I want it to extend all the way? What's my total length here? Just out of interest sake, I forgot already. 140. So 140, half of 140 is about 70. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to move this guy. I want to move that guy from here to there. Well, let's do scale. No, I'm not going to stick with that. From here to here now, we have 83. And that should go a little over that section. That should do the trick for us there. And now lastly, what I want to do is I need to make sure if I'm going from there to there and it's 83, I know I'm going to go from here 83 millimeters to there. Now I know I can measure from approximately here to there to make sure we have an overlap. That's 93. So I need to draw a line out from here that way, 93 millimeters to overlap with my friend there. So this guy can now get copied. I say copy from there to there. And I can go ahead and join this to this and this and this if I'd like to, say join. That's now green, and I can also draw a line there. So that covers this section that wraps around to here. This is my living hinge for over there. This section plugs into there, and that section does that. Okay, so what I want to do is I also need to copy these guys. So I'm going to go ahead and say copy. My joints from that end needs to go all the way to here, to that end there. So that's where I need to stop. I want to go ahead and explode that. I shouldn't have joined that one. I'm going to say explode there. And I'm going to delete this one. And I'm going to delete that one. And I can now trim off here. So I'm going to say trim, you and you. And this guy and this guy and this guy can now be joined onto this and that and that. Let's just select all of these. I'm selecting the green ones first, not the black ones. That way the black sections there will become green when I join the whole lot together. The first color you select will be your dominant color and ends up being the color you have left when you join two different colors together. All right, so now I know if I'm going from there to there, I don't technically need those extra blocks there. So I can go ahead and say ungroup quickly. So deselect this, 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 and this. And now say group again, and I can delete those because I don't need them. All right, so because I only have those joints here going all the way to here. All right, that takes care of that. The last section I need to do is I need to design a clasp that will sit here and allow me to join onto that section there. So let's do that quickly. So what I want to do is I'm going to design the clasp first. I know that the wood is 3 millimeters thick, so I draw a line 3 mil down that way, about 10 mil, and then 3 mil up this way. So this section will protrude or slot into that guy over there. I'll draw that next. Next up, I want to make sure that this doesn't push in all the way. So I'm going to go 2 millimeters this way. This tab will catch it and stop it from going too deep. Up to, I can do a 45 mil that way. Next up, I need to draw a tab, 3 mil. My wood is 3 mil thick. No, I almost messed up. Again, I need to have a little stopper there. Then 3 mil up that way. And then this length here is the length of the tab that will catch onto my piece of wood at the top there. So I'm going to go all the way to there. And then how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 millimeters should do the trick down to there. That should do the trick. I'm going to go and see trim there. I'm going to join the whole lot, and I'm going to say fillet there and there. Oh, that's still a huge fillet. Let's do a fillet of 2.5. Fillet here and here. Fillet there. No. This is a 4 mil, so I need a 2 millimeter fillet for there and there and there and there. And then I will do a 5 millimeter fillet for this guy to have a nice rounded edge at the top. All right, cool. So that guy will now be my tab that will be sitting there to lock onto this edge here. I'm going to change that color to green. because we're going to be cutting that last. And now I know I need to draw or design a slot to fit this guy that will be going over here. So let's do that. I know it's 3mm wide and 10mm long. So 10mm that way and 3mm that way. I'm just holding down Shift to disable my ortho. There we go. Move that tab down just one, and I'm going to say mirror over from here to there. So these will now join in here. The idea is that when we are assembled, this guy will sit over there and plug into that slot vertically. Next up, I need to have a corresponding slot over here that is big enough to fit all of this and slide over it. So I'm going to measure the total length from here to there. That's 22mm. So I know I need a slot that is 22mm wide, 22mm this way, and 3mm this way. And it needs to correspond with this slot. Now the next thing I know, again from experience, is if I make this slot exactly 3mm, it's going to have a hard time fitting over that precisely. So what I want to do is make it just a touch wider. I'm going to grab these 2 points and say move up 0.2mm that way. These 2 points down 0.2mm that way. And that way the slot is just a little bit wider than the wood I'm using to create this slot there. And it'll slip over it very nice and easily. Okay, cool. Next up, I know that if it's exactly 22, again, I might struggle with a little bit of alignment. So I'm going to go ahead and say move these that way, 0.2. And move these that way, 0.2. And that way I've just created a slight offset. I could have just used the offset tool again over here. I could have used that as the offset curve tool to do exactly the same thing. Next up, what we need to do is we need to make sure that this tab or this slot will be in the exact right position to fit onto it, the opposite mating surface. So what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to grab all of these and I'm just going to say group so they stay together. And I'm going to go ahead and say I want to make a copy of this. I want to say copy. And I'm doing this so you can practically see where they should mate and or align. So I know that the entire thing should be from here to here. That it's the length of that section. That is 137 in total. So I know if I draw a line from that beginning of that tab over there, 137 long to there. I know if I place this from that point there, mating with that edge there, that is where they should be aligning, or they will be covering up and matching over there. So what I need to do is I need to make sure this guy slides into here and it will mate with that surface there and that surface there. Then I know this guy is now in the right position on that object there. And now the last thing I can do is I can just grab it and say mirror over to the top, to there. And I'm going to say copy from that quad to that quad there. And now I don't need that. I can go ahead and delete it. And I know that that is now in the right position to mate up with that section there. So I'm going to move that guy down out. I don't need that anymore. And now my part is done. I'm going to grab that and this and just change their colors as well so that they're blue. This part is now done. So I can grab all of those and say group those together. And I can just arrange my parts so that they're more efficient for laser cutting. So I'm going to go ahead and say slide that to there, and I'm just getting these as close as I can to not waste material. I'm going to go ahead and say mirror over from there to there, and now I just need to grab this one, stick it over there, and make one copy of it. There we go. So I now have my 2 tabs. I have my 1 piece with a living hinge on both edges, and I have my 2 side plates. And that is my case with a living hinge done. I can now go ahead and laser cut this. The blue curves will be cut first, the green curves will be cut last, and I'm good to go. All right, thanks for watching.